Do you think your CV speaks for you? Nailing a PhD interview is not just about grades and answering questions. It's more about making a PowerPoint presentation that tells your research story and ends with a confident Q&A session. In today's video, I will show you how to make a killer PowerPoint presentation that will create a lasting impression and make it unforgettable. It is the tried and tested strategy for a presentation and Q&A style of PhD interview. So stay with me till the end of the video and I will share my experience and I will use my slides as examples that landed me a PhD spot at the Tokyo Institute of Technology and also won me a Japanese government scholarship. So let's get started. There are some unsaid rules for the presentation based PhD interview. First of all is the rule of thumb, that is 2 to 1. That is 2 minutes for every slide. So you need to know the duration of the presentation that would be allocated to you during the interview process. And this you need to find out way beforehand before you actually start preparing your slides. For example, I have here 32 slides as you can see in the bottom left corner here, and this was my entire deck for my PowerPoint presentation for the PhD interview. Now out of these 32 slides, only 24 slides as you can see here had real information, and I will get to it in a minute how these made 24 slides. But that was because I was told that I will have about 45 minutes for the PowerPoint presentation followed by the Q&A session. So approximately 24 slides was good justice. Second rule is the background color of the slides. So find out the official colors of your target institute and use them as the background color or set them as the template for your slides. This would make a very good impression. Now, for example, so the official color of my institute, that was Tokyo Institute of Technology, was science blue color. So you can see how I have used here in the background, and I've used contrasting or stark colors to enhance my content. This would engage the panelist or your interviewers, and they would also retain their attention throughout the presentation. Another very well-known example is for the Harvard University. Its official colors are red, black, and a tinge of golden, as you may know that exists in its logo. So you can use a template, something that has strong colors, highlighting any one of the color and keeping the other couple in the background, something like this. Or use something like this, an official color for the template. For example, this is the blue or the Cambridge blue color for Cambridge Institute or Cambridge University, and it will still bring out that professional look. So no matter what template you choose, make sure it looks professional and has ample or optimal space on each slide for your real content. Now, the third most important rule is to have a clear title slide. Now, usually you will be given sufficient time to set up your PowerPoint presentation, or it might be uploaded onto the system before your turn to present if there are several candidates on the same day. In any case, please make sure that you do a tech check. So check out my previous video on how to prepare for the PhD interview. Now, typically, you may be introduced by someone before actual presentation, and this might be one of the interviewers on the panel or your potential mentor or someone from the staff. But whether or not you are introduced, your title slide should be clear enough and it should also state your name. That would give your initial introduction and acquaint the panel of interviewers with your topic. And this is also a tricky juncture, let me tell you that. Why? Because some panelists may go ahead and ask you at this point to introduce yourself or tell me about yourself, the trickiest question or the most dreaded question. So again, please do check out my previous video on tell me about yourself, and I have given a detailed structure and a perfectly crafted answer about how to address this question. and the link for both these videos are in the description box, so please make sure you check it out. It will be real helpful, and if you have any specific questions, please post them in the comment box and I will answer them personally. However, if no one asks this question and you are just standing on the podium and you have to start your presentation, make sure that you give an introduction about yourself. Now, this has to be a very shorter, crisper version of the long template that would be used for the one-on-one interview. So it should be only 10 to 15 seconds, like an elevator pitch. You do not need to give your full credentials or your academic background, because they already have your CV in front of them and I'm sure they have gone through it. So start with something like this. For example, how I did it in my case. Good morning. My name is Radhika Kamdar and I worked as a JRF at Tata Institute of Fundamental Research on the characterization of transilin protein used in NHEJ pathway, and as an SRF in ACTRAC, studying the role of galactin in organ homing. And then straightway jump into your presentation. Now, the fourth rule, and the most important, or one of the most important, is the structure and organization of your slides. Now, basically, any PowerPoint presentation for the PhD interview would consist of 10 to 15% of the slides consisting of general background, an introduction about the field, that would then slide into very specific or narrowed down background, again 10 to 15% of the total content of the slides. It would be very project related introduction. Another 10 to 15% will be all your paraphernalia slides, like your title slide, thank you slide, conclusions, acknowledgements, publications, short summary if it is separate, etc. And the main 70 to 75% of the meat will be your actual data, your actual project related content. And this is irrespective of whether you're describing one or two projects. Try not to go beyond that. So let's check out my slide deck and I will show you how exactly you can structure your PowerPoint presentation. Now you can see here that I started with my introduction slide, first one here, and then followed by two general introductions about the field that I was working in. And then I slide into the specific introduction about the project from slide 4 onwards, followed by a very narrow introduction about the specific protein that I was working on, starting from slide 5. Thereafter, I slide comfortably explaining my findings, my experiments and data from slide 6 until slide 24. Okay. Now, in between this, I also introduced another protein that was a part of that project. And so in here, slide 18, I again gave a brief introduction about that particular protein that I wanted to show pertaining to my project. And since I was working on two different projects and in two different institutes, I also talked a little bit about another project, and starting from slide 22, a brief introduction about that field, the work that I was doing in slide 23, and the final piece of data that I had found during my short stint at that particular institute. Now, if you are switching gears between projects, for example, these two projects, although the broad aspect was kind of related, the narrow field itself was quite different. So, before you switch into a different project from the ongoing project, use words or phrases like, now I will switch gears a bit, and then start explaining the next project, followed by the ongoing work or your aims and whatever data you might have. So always try to get into the flow or keep the flow going for your whole presentation. The final slide would consist of conclusions. Now use bullet points here. For example, this one. Now I did have a little bit more of text. You can make it very concise and precise here. You can use phrases rather than complete sentences, or try to shorten the sentences even further if possible, so that the take home message is very clear from your final slide. The shorter and crisper it is, the better it is. Thereafter, you can go for a publication slide if you have any. For example, in my case, while I was giving this presentation for the interview, I already had 2 publications, and the third one was already just accepted. So I listed out all the publications that I had. You can also follow this with an acknowledgement slide. Thank all the members that you have worked with or who have given any kind of contribution towards your project, or sometimes people who have just been there for you, just been friendly and helped you sail through your journey. This comes across that you are a team player and a very humble person, so it's important to give that. And finally, always give a thank you slide and just mention thank you. You can also use your lab photos if you can. Of course, please seek permission from your mentor and your lab colleagues or whoever's photos you're going to use. The fifth rule of the PowerPoint presentation is to focus on the project or the work that you have spent significant amount of time on, or that has led to publications. Now, the first project gave me 3 publications, so of course I spent maximum time on it. But I also chose to introduce my second project because I was still affiliated to that institute and I had still work ongoing while I was giving this interview. So it makes sense to do both. But you may choose to skip the smaller projects or the ones that might not have given you publications. But if you choose to introduce more than one project and speak about them, then make sure you give equal or justified weightage to each of them. The sixth rule for the slides is to design them data oriented. Now, remember that sometimes you are just an intern and you might not have had significant amount of work or data if you've been just a summer project student or something. But that's okay. Just focus on the findings or whatever contributions you might have made to that particular project, and do not crowd the slides with text. Make them data oriented. The introduction slides should have sufficient text and that's about it, but thereafter all your slides should have everything only as the title and conclusion. If anything at all, use bullet points so that these are eye-catchy, they are engaging, and they also retain the attention of your panelists, and they are easy to read definitely. The seventh and the most important rule, or something that I cannot stress enough, is that always rehearse your presentation umpteen times. Do not get irritated about speaking to yourself again and again. Rehearse in front of the mirror or rehearse in front of your friends and colleagues and lab mates. Give mock presentations. Ask them to conduct a mock question answer session for you. Why? Because you need to time yourself. It is okay to be slightly under the time limit. For example, if you're given 45 minutes, you can finish your presentation in around 35 to 40 minutes, and that's fine. But do not go beyond, like less than 35 minutes, because that shows that you have nothing to say about and you're not sure about what you're going to do next. But try not to overshoot definitely, because that kills your impression. It is very important to time yourself. So make sure you rehearse and you make sure your flow is correct, because you are not supposed to memorize. You will also may not be allowed to have any written script, and even if you carry something like that, it would kill your impression, because it's an interview and it should be considered like an examination. So most examinations are not open book, especially when they are like PowerPoint based interview sessions. So make sure you rehearse them so you have the flow straight in your head. You know how the story flows, you know which slide comes after which, and you have the entire structure here stored. Even if your words are different every time, that's fine. Try you say it in such a way that you don't have to take too many pauses or think, because you're talking about your work and you're supposed to have a thorough knowledge about your projects. Now, I said that I have only 24 slides out of the 32 slides. So let's check it out, that how my deck of 32 was actually only 24, so that it matched with the 45-minute time. So you can see here in the bottom left corner, my deck is 32 slides. But like I said, I had 28 slides for my presentation. But out of these 28 slides, the first is a title slide, and the last three slides, that is publications, acknowledgements, and thank you. So that makes it 4 slides. So out of 28, my 4 slides are just paraphernalia or embellishment slides. So the entire meat of this PowerPoint presentation is from 2 to 25. That makes it 24 slides. So you'll ask me, why the extra 4 slides here then? So that brings me to the final rule. Expect technical and project related questions on your PowerPoint based interview in the Q&A session. So make a list of all the trivial and even specific project related questions that you could get asked, and try solving them, try answering them. Get help from your peers, from your lab mates, colleagues, people who are familiar with your work, people who are familiar with the field of work that you are in. Ask them to ask you several questions and prepare for mock interviews. Give the PowerPoint presentation and also give the question answer mock interview. This will make you ready for the D-Day. It will also tell you what are the gaps in the data that you might have. Now, these might not be addressed directly in the presentation, but you would still need to address them while you are answering the questions. So, if there is any basic data or something that you have been doing to address those gaps, these are the data points or the gaps that you will use as backup slides. So you can see here, from slide 29 to 32 are my backup slides. Something that was still incomplete, but I could reach out to in case I need to illustrate a particular point or emphasize on some particular protocol that I was doing, or a piece of information that I would have answered and I would have addressed in my forthcoming research. So these slides would help you clarify your answers and also make your point across. The panelists would understand that you know what you're doing, and you also know what are the gaps or things that you would need to address in the future. That will make you a problem solver. It will also teach you to think on your feet even if you don't know answer to a particular question. Now let me give you some pro tips for your D-Day so that you can ace your interview. One, very, very important. Do not read off your slides. Even if it's an introduction slide or something that has text on it, make sure it's in bullet points and make sure you have rehearsed enough so that the flow is clear in your head. Second point is that point out to the data points or even to the bullet points on the introductory slides so that you know where you're pointing, what you're saying. It would keep the panelists engaged on your slides. Okay, make sure you have eye contact with them. Make sure you are not moving around the podium too much. That is the fourth point. But make sure that you are turning from the slides to the panelists. Even if they are not looking directly at you and they are focused on the slides, it would make it an intuitive session. So they would reserve their questions for the Q&A session. They wouldn't interrupt you. So don't worry, your flow is not getting interrupted. But make sure that you keep an eye contact and you are well versed about where you're pointing and when you look at the slide and when you look at the panelists. So basically, a PowerPoint presentation is a well choreographed and rehearsed interview. In this case, you have to show your scientific knowledge, your design skills, and your communication abilities. It is more about your mindset just as much as it is about answering the questions. So Please check out my detailed videos on how to dress for your D-Day, how to prepare your mind and body for your interview, and how to answer the common or the most dreaded questions like tell me about yourself and what are your career goals. The links for all these videos are in the description box, and if you have any specific questions, please write to me in the comments or contact me at info@manuscriptease.com. If you need help preparing a deck of slides, or you need to rehearse for interviews and you need help with mock presentations and interview questions. And if you did find this video useful, please do like, share, subscribe to people who might find it really helpful and they might benefit from it. And stay tuned for more such updates. This is Dr. Radhika Kamda from Raj Research Room signing off and wishing you the best of luck for your PhD interviews.